Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your media and tech-related production questions every single day. Cindy Drozda from Erie, Colorado is our reader today. Cindy, what's up first?
Starting us off today is Zach Stahlsmith from Chautauqua, New York. I bought a BirdDog NDI device for the non-mission critical use of viewing NDI feeds in another room, but I can't get the device to connect to my network or show anything on the HDMI output, even a menu. Thoughts?
We're going to start with Guy Cochran this morning for answers. Guy?
So I bet you it's this device right here. It's the BirdDog Play, and I bet you it's one of the first generation models that doesn't have a fan. So if you plug it in and you listen to it spin up, does it make a sound? If it makes a sound, then you have the latest generation one. If you have the first generation one, they have a trade-in program where you can get the latest one. If you do have the latest one, there is an issue with it being underpowered because it doesn't have PoE. So there's a USB power input. So if you're giving it 3 volts instead of 5 volts, I've seen a lot of issues on the forums. I gave up on this unit, even though recently I was on a set where they had a ton of them. I couldn't believe how many of them that they were using. But I've been using this one instead, which is the Magewell, which I've been super, super happy with. So I really trust the Magewell stuff. But other people are having good luck with those BirdDogs. Just make sure you got the updated one and not the first generation.
Zach, we hope that helps you. We're going on to our next question.
Next one is from Ed Judge in West Granby, Connecticut. In a few weeks, I'll record a live presentation using an Atem Mini Pro ISO. The presenter will have their laptop connected via HDMI to a projector. I'm thinking of using an HDMI splitter to also route that signal directly into the Atem. Thoughts?
And Guy's coming right back to help you with this. Guy?
I wouldn't use a splitter just because the handshake that occurs on that HDMI occurrence, it can cause a hiccup. And if you're got a presenter that is not in the mood for any kind of tech delays, I would just get one of the Decimator MDHXs or one of the 4K units. And it's the gold standard. It just works with every laptop all the time. And so I would convert it over and then send out the signal that way. That way there's one handshake point and you're not having it try to dance between two and then lock up. I've just seen it happen and it's a nightmare. So $299 for a Decimator, solve it.
Courtney Gooden's going to help you out here. Courtney?
Well, a Decimator may not have 2 outputs unless the projector happens to be able to use SDI. Or you have, because if you need 2 HDMI outputs, I don't think most of the Decimators have 2 HDMI outputs from a single HDMI input. So if you are trying to feed the projector and the Atem at the same time, you could feed the laptop into the Atem and take the program out, HDMI out of the Atem, if you're not using that for anything else, and send that to the projector. That would be a thought. Or you can use a splitter. I've used a splitter in situations like that. You just have to make sure of a couple of things. You have to make sure that hook the splitter up first to the Atem and let it talk to the Atem and set its resolution and handshake there. And the fact that the Atem does not support HDCP, as long as you're not trying to play back something from the laptop that is copy protected or has the copy protection bit set and turns on HDCP, you should be okay. And then make sure your projector can handle 1080p going in. So check to make sure the specs on the projector. Most projectors these days that have HDMI inputs can accept 1080p, even though they'll downscale it, even if their raster, their internal projection is chips are only 720p. They'll downscale them. So you can do it, but try it out ahead of time. Don't just go in thinking, hey, I'll just plug in the splitter and it's going to work. Because sometimes, as was said by Guy, sometimes it's kind of a nightmare because it has to negotiate which one is in control of the resolution and timing.
Alex also has some thoughts here. Alex?
If you decide to do a splitter, and I would say that I agree with Guy that when you do the splitter, there's the handshake that you have to be kind of careful of. You have to get it set up ahead of time and let it stay the same and not let anyone turn anything off. So that's the one thing that I would say there. What you're looking for also is possibly, something a little bit more beefy as a splitter. So some of the monoprice Blackbird solutions will do the handshake for you independently of the computer on the other side. So like the one that I have, I wouldn't get an 8x8, but what you're looking for is something that's going to do that handshake and define that and lock it. So you can also, so that's the thing you want to look at, because I think that what you're talking about is your Atem Mini doesn't have is HDMI in. So if you have an Atem Mini that was SDI, which I have, you could then do exactly what Guy was talking about, which is decimate it, run the HDMI through it, and then run SDI out to it. But I think that if you're doing it with an HDMI, you will need some kind of splitter to make that happen. I will admit, most of the time when we've done this, we run the computer directly into the Atem, and then we run it to the projector. And the reason we do that is so that we can do other things to the projector. Usually we want added features on the projector from that program out.
Next question.
Zach Stallsmith is back again from Chautauqua, New York. I'm going to be live streaming a wedding to YouTube with an Atem Mini Pro ISO, audio from an X32 and video from a PTZ. I'll be able to hardwire internet at the venue, but what should I be aware of with this setup?
Alex is going to start us out. Alex?
I would test if you're streaming directly from the Atem Mini, just test it heavily before you do that. So there's a couple things. One is you'll see a little bit of crushed blacks because that's the way that the Atems do convert to H.264. Two is that the interface for the Atem is very good for streaming. The actual streaming part isn't as good. So it can be a little less. The quality is a little lower and the stability is a little lower than what a lot of other options that you might have are. So just keep that in mind. As it's not that you can't do it, and people have done it, but that's something to kind of think about. Also, really be careful with the X32 if you're going to embed audio via the Atem Mini. You want to test that ahead of time and really be careful of gain staging and making sure that the signal that you're getting in, you want it to be balanced until the last moment, and then go in, and you want to be very careful about making sure that the levels are exactly the same. It doesn't peak gracefully, so you don't want to overmodulate into your switcher.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, everything that Alex said. I was just drawing some stuff while I was thinking about it here. Let's see. So where's it going to? YouTube, I would have RTMP A and B. So what is the encoder? I would not use that Atem as an encoder. I would use something else. I would also have a second internet for some kind of backup. I would also do some kind of shotgun mic, some kind of backup sound so that viewers that are on the stream can hear what else is going on, because sometimes when you have just lavs, it's very dry, and so the viewers don't get a sense of what's going on.
Nice advice. Let's go to the next question.
Coming to us through the QR code, Kent in Madison, Ohio is asking, what are the best wireless video transmitters with a budget of around $600 to $800?
Alex is going to help you out here. Alex?
I think that the Sennheisers are probably still the best ones in that price range. They're still going to be an RF signal. They're not going to be a 2.4, or a 5, or 6, or whatever they want to use there. So I think that those Sennheiser, the base Sennheisers, are probably the best in that budget. I will say that my world exists above that budget and below that budget. So when I'm doing things that are more what I would consider hobby-like, I have DJIs and some other little wireless things there. And did he say video transmitters? Did I get the wrong? Wireless video transmitters.
Wireless video
misread
transmitter.
it completely. I will retweak that and say the only ones that we've seen in that price range that anybody's using are the Hollylands. And you're going to get, that I've seen. Guy may have a different one, but the Hollylands are what we've seen in that price range. And they do not have a huge range, and they have a lot more latency than what we're used to with other transmitters. But we definitely have seen them work.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, it depends on what you're outputting to. If this is a crucial one, then I would rent something more serious, like one of the Teradek Rangers or something in that world that's way more expensive. But if you have to buy something, I have some pretty good luck with these Axoons. The Cineview in particular is the one that I have. On this last shoot, we were using some DJIs, and we just rented them. They were $2,500 to buy them, and it was just a better investment because these things, they change. I mean, I'm watching a well-known organization that has a bunch of used Teradeks for sale right now, because you ride the wave. You buy this stuff, you use it for some productions, and then you either made your investment back or you didn't. And at $600 to $800, it's iffy, you know. And there's nothing worse than getting that breakup in the middle of a big show. My advice, if you do this, is to get the receiver as close as you can to the transmitter. We've ran really long runs, even via fiber, and that way the receiver's super close, because again, there's nothing worse than seeing just that blocky puke of rainbow of pixels everywhere. And Alex may remember this happened at that wedding where the exact same thing, the thought crossed my mind, where it was just like, hey, we should put that receiver closer, and we didn't. And at the minute that the crowd stood up, and this was CEOs of a major corporation were present, and I wanted to cry. So don't be like me.
We talk about it a lot, the bags of water that are human beings when they get in between a signal and its receiver. Oof. Alex?
Yeah, line of sight is, especially as you go lower in cost, line of sight becomes incredibly important. Not going through anything, not going through people, not going through anything out, you know, any kind of debris. You need to be able to, if you can't see that receiver, you should be worried about it. We try to keep that going for many. You'd be surprised at how a lot of wireless, like when you think about football games and they put little wireless Saxcoms on people's shoulder pads that are tiny. Part of why it works is because line of sight. You know, like it's a long throw, but it doesn't have to compete with anything other than the players, and so that tends to be a possible thing. So definitely think about that. You definitely don't want to ever use video wireless for convenience. We will use wires, until the very last moment, and then in a place where, like, I've got an event next week where we've got a Ronin 40 and a Steadicam and a Ronin. So not a Ronin 40 and an Inspire. So we've got 3 wireless systems that are all going on there. But we're going to try to keep them wired until the very last minute, and we only switched over to a wireless at the very last minute because of a change in the way the walkthrough is working. And so, but we try to keep it wired whenever we can. I think a lot of people get into this habit of, like, I'm going to make everything wireless so I can set up faster. It's really worth running the cables for that.
Good advice. Hey, don't forget that there's a Makana system in the back end that allows you to vote on the questions that are piling into us every day. And when you vote, it is important because the questions that get the most votes, we get to quicker and spend a little more time in there. So if that is something you're interested in doing, please make sure that you kind of get into our back end system and make sense out of that. All you have to do is go to askofficehours.global. That's officehours.global/join. Officehours.global/join. That's where you can get into the back-end system and have more of an effect on what the show is all about. Let's go to the next question.
Another one from the QR code. Jeff Flukiger in Elkhorn, Wisconsin is asking, follow-up from Monday question. So my company has field techs. We do not have many images of them, but we need images of them for brochures and our website. I was asking if there's a way to put our logo onto the shirt of a stock image for that purpose.
Ooh, Alex, what do you think?
You might be able to do that, but what I would say is that in general, I would just do this with Photoshop. Like, the amount of work that it's going to take you to do this, I don't know if you're trying to sew it in or you're trying to just have it just be there. I get that you have field techs, so you probably don't have access to good cameras, and so it's like they're all everywhere. I mean, we work with field techs that are like this, so it's, you can't have them take a selfie. You need a real, you need photos that give people. I get where you're going with it. I'd probably take good pictures of the ones that you have available to you. Obviously the best way to do it is what Mickey suggests, which is get a photographer to go take a picture of them in the field with their shirt on, with the logo and everything else, and make it authentic. If you're not going to do that, then I think that you probably could get it to stitch. You could probably give it an image and give it the logo and say, stitch this onto the thing. I think that probably by itself would probably just work. So I think that, a ChatGPT would probably do that in in one prompt. So you can give it a shot. And I don't think that you're going to using that the way you're talking about using it. It's not going to break any TOS. It's a little weird to not to have stock images instead of the actual technicians. But if you decide to do it, I don't think you're breaking any laws or any agreements.
Let's go to our next question.
From Guy Cochran in Seattle, Washington. Why has DJI dropped the price to $1 from $979 for ProRes RAW? With a link.
That's surprising news. Courtney?
Well, I think this is all stems back to legal issues over the licensing right to Red RAW, because they used to make a lot of money off of Red used to make a lot of money off of licensing its patents on the Red RAW format, and charging $979 is kind of an outrageous price per camera or per user. Then they were sued over that license, and several. Apple sued them, Nikon sued them. A number of camera manufacturers sued them over that, and that led to Nikon talking to Red and eventually buying Red. So now that Nikon owns Red, they own the patents to the Red RAW, and they dropped the price to $1. I think because a patented type of compression doesn't gain traction and footing, and if it's overpriced. We found this with the MPEG and with the MPEG group, who was pricing their decoders for MPEG that made it expensive. So a lot of things did not include MPEG in it because of the price of the paying the license fee for the patent. So I think Nikon has plenty of money. They now own the patent. And if they want to, they can put it out for $1. They do still have to charge for it. Otherwise, it would maybe eliminate their patent or put their patent into the public domain if they didn't charge for it. So that's why they lowered it to $1, so that they're still charging for it, so they still have control over the patent. But they want to, I think they want to spread it a little wider and get it to catch on as more of a common means of doing compression, in a intra-frame compression in cameras.
I think there's a lot of truth in what Courtney's saying. Also, remember Atomos, when they developed it in conjunction with Apple, originally had a co-patent, or they had an agreement in place with it. And I suspect it may have run out by now. I think it was for a limited term. So it may be that there are less IP restrictions on the ProRes RAW codec today than there were before. I remember there was a lot of discussion at the time that they came out with it at NAB about how it was going to be a partnership for a specific period of time, and that may be over now. Hard to say. But anyway, thanks for the question, Guy. Let's go to our next question.
Next up is Harshid Trivedi in Daytona Beach, Florida, USA, and on today's panel. What are some trusted dongles that offer a pass-through for charging off of either AC or battery bank and allows for connecting devices? USB-C for Pixel, modern iPhones, Samsung.
Alex Lindsay, help him out.
I don't recommend doing, I think what you're talking about is having a pass-through battery. So it's plugged in, it's got a battery, and the thing that I would use is a UPS. You can get a small UPS, but that's what you're looking for. There are small battery banks that do this. My experience with them is the batteries don't last very long. Just the way that they use them, they're constantly charging and constantly discharging, and it degrades the quality of the battery. I think that UPSs are built for this. So even like a small one that's like a little, it's not quite as modular. But I think a UPS does exactly what you're talking about. If you're trying to travel, I would stick with batteries that you charge. There's really good ones that don't sit and charge, but like this Anchor is what I carry with me, and it lasts a long time. I hook my when I'm flying, I hook my Apple headset to it, and I can last. Between that and the Apple headset, I can definitely go all the way across country. So, yeah,
Courtney.
Yeah, I thought what he was talking about was, Harshid can maybe tell us, is a hub, a USB-C hub that breaks out, HDMI and other USB-Cs, yet has a feed through for USB-C output, and so that you can plug your power supply into the hub or an external battery, and it will pass through that power to the laptop and still charge the laptop provide enough current. And so you have to check and make sure. It usually will have, these type of hubs have a PD input on them, let's say PD on it, which means it negotiates with the power supply coming in to deliver the correct voltage, and it down converts the voltage to the 5 volts that's used by USB-A if it has those on the hub. And it passes through the 19 volts or 20 volts that charges your laptop. But you got to make sure it delivers enough current, and usually it will say on the specs for that particular hub what the pass-through current is to make sure that it can deliver enough current to not only power your laptop but also charge your laptop's batteries and still power the hub. So be careful about that. Usually they're about 50 to 75 watts, and some depending upon your laptop that you're charging, it may require more than that.
Yeah, I was going to say, just yesterday, I think maybe the same power supply, remote power supply that Alex has. I decided I was going to quickly take a look and see if one of my major Apple, I think it's like 100-watt chargers, would work with this. It recharged it in like 45 minutes from a third its power all the way up to full. And that's, I think, because of the intelligence built into the power pack. It really does look at the ports and see what's coming in and matches that correctly. So I wouldn't do that all the time. But
Bill, if I could just clarify with that. So the dongle that I'm kind of talking about, let's just say if I'm hooking up my SSL2, I would still want to keep maybe my phone charged. So I've seen that they have like a dongle. I'm holding a dongle up right now. It's from Samsung. One side would be USB-C, so I could hook up the power supply off of, let's say, the charger or the power bank, as we just talked about, the Anchor, but still be able to hook up a device that feeds a signal to the phone or what have you.
I'm going to say maybe, and the reason I'm going to say that is we have seen recently that sometimes cables have a lot of electronics, active electronics in them. Apple's cables are notorious for that, and people are saying, why did you buy that Apple thing for $70 when you could have gotten one for $30 off or for $15 off of eBay? And the answer is there is actually a lot of circuitry in even the connectors now, some power supplies and things like that. A lot of that I suspect is intelligence between the device and the power supply. So I wouldn't just say get a cable and do it. I would say test and read a lot on the internet to make sure that the power is being delivered correctly for the device. And the active intelligence between some of these new power supplies and any source of power that you plug into the wall can be negotiated and can be safe if they built that into the system. Courtney, you wanted to say some more?
Yeah, I was just going to say, the thing that you're probably looking for, Anchor makes one that they sell on Amazon for about $45 called the Anchor Laptop Station. Oh, sorry, we can hear your screen reader there, Archie. And it supposedly is designed for MacBook Pro, XPS, and more. So it has a PD input, so you can plug your power supply into that, and then the output plugs into your laptop, and it gives you a couple of USB-A type outputs and I think HDMI outputs, so that you can then charge your phone off the USB-A type outputs at the same time.
Yeah, we've got a couple of recommendations in the chat as well. Jack Cannon says Blue Condor with a K makes a nice one, Harshid, and I've had really good experiences with Blue Condor stuff. And also, Ike Potter said, don't know if it fits your needs, but the Belkin AVC 18BK 4-port USB-C, USB Gen 2 multi-port hub works as well. So there are a variety of things, but it does take a little research to make sure that you're charging both quickly and safely, or trying to do pass-through power quickly and safely. Let's go to our next question.
Andre Dole in Berlin asks, I tested streaming HEVC to YouTube yesterday with a Magewell All-in-One and vMix. For some reason, it wouldn't work from the All-in-One, even if the settings seemed right. When changing the AIO to H.264, it worked instantly. Ideas? vMix had no issue streaming HEVC.
Guy Cochran's going to help you out. Guy?
Yeah, just to back up, to add a little context to this, Andre posted in our Discord about some moray that was happening in the background, and I was like, hey, man, you want to look at this other pipeline that YouTube offers us. We're using it on this show, which is VP9, which will clean up a lot of that. He was getting, because there was so much movement and tiny detail, it was falling apart, breaking. So in H.264, you have a limited bandwidth in this that's what everybody gets on YouTube. But if you want this higher quality pipeline, Kirk Holler let us know here on this show that you can send HEVC. So when Andre went to send HEVC from his all-in-one, what's happening is there's something called RTMP, enhanced RTMP. And so I'm betting that Magewell is not compliant with RTMP-S. And so we could send a note over to Ryan over at Magewell and get that fixed. But vMix absolutely works. So for now, just use vMix, but eventually I'll see if we can get a patch rolled out with Magewell and get that working. But yeah, it's amazing to see the quality difference. So for those of you that are listening, if you want the best live streams, go back and listen to that episode with Kirk Holler, and he lets us know that this is indeed the truth. And you can see by right-clicking on this video in YouTube, and you'll see Stats for Nerds, and you can see that we're using the VP9 codec, not AVC01. If you look at other people's streams, you'll see when you right-click, it'll say AVC01, and that tells you that that's the H.264 standard pipeline that's being utilized. So the VODs will look crisper, sharper, and more color-rich. So definitely use HEVC for anything that you care about. Or you can also use AV1 or send 1440p or larger video.
Harshid, you wanted to come in on this?
Pass it on.
Okay. Next question.
From Tony Mobley in Noonan. Cannot get an Atem Mini Extreme right now. How can I add 2 more video ports?
Alex, do you have a solution for Tony?
My assumption is you need 2 separate things coming out of your Atem, and there's not really any way to do that. There's one output from it. You technically have 2. You have one that's the video, the HDMI output, and one that's the USB-C. But if you're dealing with the smaller Atem, there's not really any way to get another different output from there, if that's what you're looking for. Otherwise, you're looking at splitting it out. You can get a 1 to 2, 1 to 4, 1 to 8, 8 to 8, 4 to 4, 2 to 4, all those things are there if you're just trying to copy it. But my assumption is you're trying to get different things out of it, and there's not a clean way to do that from your Atem without increasing the number of or getting another version.
Courtney, you had a question, or you had an answer?
Well, it depends, and I used to do this in the past. You can get a multi-input switch that switches between 3 different, let's say 3 different, or they make them for 3 and 4. This is by IO Gear. That has 3 different HDMI inputs and 1 HDMI output. You run the output of this into one of your HDMI inputs on your Atem Mini. However, it does require double switching. You have to pre-switch on the incoming switch here to whatever input you want to bring up on your Atem before you bring that input up, switch to that input on the Atem, because this is not a clean switch. There are some that are clean switches, but not at this price of $24. But this would allow you to actually get it. If you had to choose between 2 different laptops or a camera before you bring it up on the Atem switcher, something like that can work. There are problems with doing that because you have to make sure your HDMI inputs that are going into this mechanical switch, it's electronic actually, but are the same resolution and frame rate. But if you're sure that those are coming in and you have them all set to the same resolution and frame rate, you can switch between them, and then the output will then come into your into one of the inputs of your Atem Mini. And then you have a remote control on the one that I showed. You just pick 1, 2, or 3 of your inputs before you bring it up on your, let's say, input 1 of your Atem Mini.
I mentioned the officehours.global join before, but there's a quicker way if you want to get a quick question in. That's the QR code that I just put up on the screen. It also can be accessed by just simply typing in askofficehours.global into your web browser. That's askofficehours.global if you're watching the show, or anywhere, just type that in and it gets you right into the back-end system. It's a little different and it's not as complex, but it also works equally well. So get your questions in. Next question.
Dave Troutman in Edmonton, Canada asks, does anyone else here check their backups on April 1st?
No, I do not. But Alex, do you?
Some people do this. I just try to survive April 1st, as you already saw from my last comment. So I don't do anything new. I just I don't want to do anything that's different. I just want to get through the day, and then we get on to the rest of the other 364 days that are normal.
Okay, moving on. Next question.
This one's from Jeff Veely in Henderson, Texas. Apple has rebilled me for an authorized subscription. If I dispute it, they've threatened to delete my iCloud account. Has anyone experienced this? Any advice?
Alex, have you ever heard of this?
I'm just trying to figure out what the rebill means. So when you said Apple has rebilled you for it, I'm not clear what that means. If you said you wanted to, if you're on a monthly account, I don't know. I just don't understand what you mean by rebuild you for an authorized subscription. So I don't, you have to be more specific. That doesn't make any sense. Like you shouldn't be able to, I don't know if they're rebilling you twice or whether they, it just doesn't, and if it just make sure that it's not some email that told you they were doing that. If it's an email, it's, as Evan Troxel said, it could be a phishing email. So if you didn't get this through your Apple device, if you got this as an email, anytime someone tells you you have a charge that you didn't expect, it's phishing. Don't click on anything. Don't talk to them about it. Don't do anything else there. Nothing happened. Check your bank account. 99% of the time, it's just a phishing exercise that they're trying to get you to jump onto. You have to kind of not believe any unexpected email at this point is not true. You should just assume that it's not true.
The chat has exploded with the word phishing with PH in front of it. So There you go. Courtney, thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely check. Log into Apple directly and check your account and see if you're being billed twice. This can happen, though, if you have two Apple IDs, like you got an Apple ID on one computer and you bought another computer and you logged in and it gave you a different Apple ID. And then you registered for a subscription on one ID, and then it somehow now is starting to bill you a separate subscription for both of those IDs if you cross-link those two accounts somewhere with other subscriptions. So check that if you've used two different Apple IDs or email accounts to sign into your Apple ID. That may be why you're being billed double, if it is indeed a double billing on your Apple account.
Cindy Drozda.
I had a recent phishing email from somebody saying that there was a charge on my Apple card, and I called up Apple and they said they will never send you an email or a text about anything to do with your account, and that you should go look at the account and see if there's a charge on there, actually a charge on there. But it sounds like Apple is a victim of phishing recently, so watch out.
Yeah, and I'm going to, in defense of Jeff, because he's struggling with something, I had one struggle area with Apple, and it was that I had multiple Apple accounts. And the reason I had done it is because I made a mistake signing up my son decades ago. And so when I was doing that, I was putting money into his account for songs and stuff like that. But I somehow started using his songs. He went away to college, and I had all this big balance. Well, I'm going to buy some songs with that. I ended up getting his persona on Apple's system and my persona a little messed up. It was a nightmare for a long time because Apple is very rigid about IDs and pathways into their system. I think they do that in part because they have so much credit card information and other data that is important to you locked in the systems that they're just really tight about not having one person access another person's account in any way, shape, or form. It took me a while, and I still don't think I've completely done it. I just kind of abandoned ever using that music account and things like that. But if you've used multiple IDs, multiple email addresses, what somebody said, their family connections and things like that can be iffy to manage. If you're not getting the answer that you want from Apple's support, just continue to try a little bit. It is complicated, but I think that security backend is the reason they have made it so tight. They want you to be you and nobody else, and sharing the you with others is deadly dangerous in the Apple system because they need to keep those IDs separate. My 2 cents anyway. Next question.
This one's from David Brady in New York City, New York, USA. I read an article on Reddit, Video Engineering, complaining about LiveU terms of service, where the license and right to use is not transferable. Is this true?
Alex?
It's funny. It's actually not that uncommon for streaming hardware to have this hidden in their TOS. So you can't sell, like, for instance, you can't sell an Elemental. Ask me how I know. so anyway, yeah. So the terms of service are connected to the software that's related to that. And so I don't know if the smaller LiveU units fall into this, where you have your own modems, but I think that the larger LiveUs may fall into this. And for a long time, I think it's only been recent that you could buy the LiveUs. I mean, for the long time, it was always a lease. I mean, I leased 2 LiveUs for a long time because it came with all your modem, connections. But I don't know, people complain about everything, but it's in the TOS. It's been in the TOS for a long time, and it's been for people who wanted to do a buyout, and it's connected to all of the other licenses that are attached to that device that aren't necessarily part of the hardware.
Next question.
Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois is asking the panel, why do rolling credits often look jerky? I see this on YouTube and even in pro videos. Credits don't always scroll smoothly. What's the best way to fix it? Any recommended software or techniques for smooth scrolling or to simply avoid?
We're going to have a discussion of this. Courtney Gooden, dive in.
Well, smooth scrolling is very tricky because, and having created a lot of smooth scrolling teleprompting software in the past, it has to do with artifacts generated by frame rate differences between the thing that's controlling the speed of the scroll and the viewing frame rate that you're looking at it at. And if you're not linked together, so that if the smooth scrolling software doesn't move the same amount between each frame, and it's not synchronized with the vertical blank, used to be vertical blank, but the transition from one frame to the next, if it doesn't scroll the same number of lines between each frame, you'll start to see artifacts that happen at different frequencies. As it catches up, every 10 frames, it'll scroll 2 lines instead of 1 line because it has moved that far. That's an artifact generated by the difference in frame rate between the scrolling software and the encoding software or the viewing software. So if you're going to create scrolling credits, good scrolling software will look at the frame rate of the video that it's rendering and only move the text a certain number of scan lines or pixel lines the same for each particular frame, and it'll only move it during the downtime between the end of one frame and the beginning of the next frame. That's when it will move them.
Alex?
Yeah. If you're looking at something that it wasn't a misconfiguration, 24p is just really chunky. so the thing is, 24 frames a second, if they're moving very quickly, when you watch it at the end of a movie, there's no correction. It's just the 24 frames. The way to fix it is to add motion blur, which would give you the feel of where it was going, but then you can't read the names. So you'll notice this especially with black and white, because black and white is going to pop out a lot more. So we try to avoid a lot of people use them for black and white, but you'll notice that it's there. A little bit of motion blur would fix that, but again, then it looks weird there. It's harder to read, but that's without the motion blur with sharp edges where you can see it and only 24 images every second, it's going to look jerky.
And no less an expert than Tuomo Kaluma, who from SPX Graphics, who's part of the kind of extended group that we deal with, in the chat said jerky motions in graphics can be a complex issue. Real-time systems may be dropping frames. Pre-rendered video may have different frame rates to your playout. The video pipeline may be doing some FPS or interlacing conversions. And human eyes are super sensitive to these glitches. Same applies to scrolling tickers. So avoid scrolling titles if you can, and instead use flipping designs. And that's from somebody who has designed all the graphics that you're seeing on our show today. He's a graphics professional and knows this inside and out. Next question.
Analyst Harshid Trivedi in Daytona Beach, Florida, USA is asking, Guy, you mentioned AVC 01. Can you break down HEVC, AV1, and HLS, please? Or anyone on the panel?
Guy, you want to dive into this? Whoops.
Yeah, I've been meaning to make a video on this and show the difference. Alex, if you have the Widowmaker files, I'd love to take those and show the side-by-side, because what we're really talking about is what does this look like live and what does this look like after the fact. So when we're talking about this transcode that occurs, it's really you're sending in H.264, HEVC, AV1, or HLS. H.264 is what almost everybody uses, and they're probably sending at about 6 megabits a second. HEVC is just a more efficient way of doing sending up these signals, so you can do basically half the bandwidth with HEVC. Now, if you're using HEVC, an indicator to transcode on that higher end pipeline is using this NVIDIA card. There's also these Intel Arc cards that'll do AV1, and then things like what we use, the Osprey Talon will do HLS. So these are all the different ways of bringing the video in. And then the AVC1 and the VP9, that's what is being transcoded to. So if you look at a Stats for Nerds, and you can see it here where we have a video that a friend of mine, video influencers, and these are guys that should know better. So this is what frustrates me, is this news hasn't reached everybody, because I know these guys are using vMix, and I even alerted them and said, hey, you got to start switching over to HEVC, because I know that your computer, you have a vMix running with an NVIDIA card. So you can see there in the codecs that it says AVC1, and that tells me that they streamed this in H.264 using and it got the regular transcoding pipeline. So if you want that pipeline, once again, they're going to transcode it, and they're going to choose one or the other. They're going to choose AVC1 or VP9 at the YouTube side. You just have to not send it H.264, or if you do choose to send H.264, send it bigger than 1080p. So 1440p or 2160p and higher will automatically get you over to that higher end pipeline.
Alex Lindsay.
I just want to make sure to outline that HEVC and AV1 are compression codecs. HLS is a transport mechanism. So HLS can be HEVC or AV1 or MPEG-1 or many other things. It's just simply the chunking of the data, but the other two are competitive compression techniques.
Reminds me of codecs versus containers. Very complicated there. By the way, if you value what we do here, there are a few ways you can help. You can like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, volunteer at officehours.global/volunteer and become part of the team that makes this happen every day. Or you can donate at officehours.global/donate. Those are all ways you can help the show as a friend. So thank you. Next question.
Next one's from Kyle Nesta in Philadelphia. Recommendation for a timecode sync solution for 2 Sony FX3s and a MixPre 3.2. Budget about $500.
Alex Lindsay.
Mickey suggests ambient locket or nano locket. We've been shifting over to them over the last year. We're timecode systems, Atomos UltraSync 1. I've been happier with the ambient boxes. And ambient boxes are great. I don't know if they fit into that budget. I think inside the $500 budget, I think that Tentacle Sync is probably the one that you may want to look at. I think the ambient ones might be a little bit more expensive, but I'm not sure.
Guy Cochran?
Yeah, Deity makes these little boxes. They look like this, the TC1s, and this is the 3-pack. And inside the 3-pack, you'll get these little guys here that basically one acts as the master, and then, or you can use the app. So one, you would sync the other two, and then you have all the cables inside of here if you're using LTC, or if you're using a RED camera or something with LEMO. But this should be in that price range. It works really well. But basically, you can also have mini plug, which you could send to a camera that doesn't have timecode capability. You could send it in the audio, so it'll sound. If you listen to it, it sounds very annoying. It's like a bunch of high-pitched squeals. But basically, that's the timecode, and you can have that come across in your app like Final Cut or Premiere. But yeah, the Deity TC1.
I love the sound of timecode in the morning. Alex Lindsay.
And Mickey said that the nano lockets are $300 or $220 each. So that'd be about, for all three of them, you'd be at about $660.
Next question.
Next one is for me. I'm looking for an app for Windows that will paste stored clipboard items with a button like Copyum does on my Mac. Will CopyQ do that? I haven't figured it out. Specifically, what I'm looking for is something where I can use a hotkey to open the program, another hotkey to paste a particular clipboard item.
So you're on Windows. I was going to say that sounds like something for shortcuts on the Mac, but on Windows, I'm not sure. Courtney, can you help her out?
Well, have you looked at Snippet? It's built into all versions of Windows now, which is designed for cutting out an area of the screen and saving it to the clipboard. And I think that it allows, the newest version may allow for multiple stores to the on the clipboard. And I think there are hotkeys. There's another, trying to think of the name of it. There is a plugin for Chrome, if you're talking about web pages, that's very handy, that will capture the whole web page. I'm trying to think. Let's see if I have it here. Anyway, Go Full Page is the name of the plugin for Chrome that lets you capture an entire web page into a single JPEG file. So if you have a really long scrolling web page, you just click this button on the plugin that plugs into Chrome, and it will scroll down, capture, scroll down, capture, scroll down, capture, and then stitch all of those captures into a single JPEG file. So it's very handy if you want to store everything in a long web page. You can deal with that. But other than that, the snipping tool, they're adding stuff to it. They just added a bunch of stuff recently to it. So just search for the snipping tool. It is in your Windows. It comes with it.
Next question.
Next one's from Ian Alford in London. Can you recommend a cheap monitor to use when shooting with my Sony A7S III mounted on cage? I don't think I need to record, just monitor.
You have a lot of choices. Alex? What do you
I mean,
think?
the one that we've used a lot for this kind of thing, these are just regular, I just need a monitor. It can be, 7, 10-inch kind of monitor, inexpensive, have been both the Feel Worlds and Lilliputs, and we have a lot of, I probably bought 100 Lilliputs for this kind of thing. They're functional. They've gotten much better over the years. I've been probably buying those little ones as kind of disposable monitors for a long time, and they're in the $100. I don't know. The ones that I buy are between $125 and $250 each for like a 10-inch screen. And so when you're just trying to have a bigger screen there to look at, and you're trying not to spend too much money on it, and it's not recording, I found that they work fine for focusing. They're not perfectly color accurate, but if you're just looking for something that you can see what's going on, they work well.
Courtney Gooden?
When I got one and I have it here. It comes in a nice little carrying case. Is this Viltrox 5-inch? It has its own battery. It uses the Sony batteries on the back. It has a pop-up, if I could figure out how to open it, a pop-up lens shade. It also is very high brightness. It's over 1,000 nits, so it's great for outdoors. This is the DC 550 portable 5.5-inch, and I think the price, let me check here, on Amazon is about $168. So it's very handy. It's a touch screen. It has a touch screen, so you can operate it that way. It also has this knob on the side, so if you've got gloves on or in cold weather, you can use this to select between things. It even has a protection so you don't accidentally bump it. You move your finger back and forth in here to select between the different menus, and you punch it like that. Very handy. Comes with a battery and that carrying case for that price, and I've been very happy with it. It's very bright, too. You can see it in sunlight.
I'm going to suspect it's a little more money, but Mickey on our chat is also recommending the Small HD Ultra 5 or Ultra 7. So if you want to do a step up, those are possible. Next question.
Next one's from Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois. I'm close to purchasing the new Mac Mini M4. Is the base model with 8 gigabytes of RAM still a good choice, or do you think it's worth paying extra for more RAM based on your experience and usage needs?
Guy Cochran's going to start us off.
Well, the gift to you is there's 8 gigabytes for free, because the base model now has 16 gigs out the gate. So for $599, you don't even have to pay extra for that. So it's not like the M2s. You don't have to pay extra to go from 8 to 16. It's included in the base. So the next step up is going to be a 512 SSD. And if you don't want to spend that, you can add in a second one. There's some great videos on YouTube about adding a drive to move your applications and some of your larger files off to. And so really the question goes to Do you want to go all the way up to $999 for the 24 gigs of RAM? And I'm using just, I have the base model, and then we have another one here that's got we upgraded it to 10 gig. Depending on what you're doing, that might be a better investment if you do have a NAS or if you have a super fast 10 gig internet connection. Just happen to have one of those. But yeah, we're running a couple apps on the M4 and have been super impressed with the performance of that. And there's plenty of videos on YouTube that show people pushing those things, especially with Logic and some of these bigger timelines. But I've ran Resolve on it, Final Cut. It runs great. It's a beast for the money. I can't believe they're so cheap. And you could even find them cheaper than the $599 if you look around.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, for I'm testing. May have to buy a lot of these, and so I'm testing the $599 version of it for some streaming, which it works perfectly. It's at like 10% capacity. But while I'm not using it, my son has been using it to edit and Resolve, and it's been working just fine there as well. I will say that there's some After Effects stuff that I've done where I run out of RAM. Like just can't render it. Like it can't figure out a way to do it. So it's not, the RAM does matter at times, but as Guy said, 16 is what the entry level is now.
Let's go to our next question. Oops, I think you're muted. Nope,
this
you're
one's
still muted. There you are.
I'm good. This one's from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. If the human eye resolution is 60 arc minutes, 1/60th of a degree, how does that drive the pixel density of on-set and video village screens for production? How about for LED walls? And how does the camera's sensor size and lens affect these decisions?
Alex, you want to weigh in on this?
The camera sensor and lenses makes way more of a difference than the eye resolution, because what we're dealing with is when we actually capture it, what are we seeing there? So the camera sensor size makes a difference because it softens those pixels together. So you can, in something that if it was if everything's in focus, you might see Moray on a 2.3 or 2.5 inch screen, 2.5 mil screen, sorry, not inch screen, but mil screen, where you need to get it smaller. But if it's out of focus, you don't notice that. In fact, when I first saw The Mandalorian, I noticed in the bokeh that there was some odd effect, and I couldn't figure out what it was because I didn't know at the very beginning of The Mandalorian that they had been shooting on an LED wall. But then it all made sense. So there was still a little change in the bokeh because of that, because it didn't completely blur out that back area. So that makes a big difference. Distance from the wall obviously makes a difference for what we're doing. But the big thing that we're oftentimes chasing is Moray. And so that's the biggest problem with LED walls. And so it's not really the resolution of what we see. It's the designs that are created by the computer or by the camera.
Courtney, you want to weigh in quick?
Yeah, I was just going to say most on-set monitors that you're looking at for evaluating stuff have a far higher dot pitch than you can resolve with your Retina if viewed from a few feet away, a foot away or more. If you get in really close where you're not seeing the entire screen, you're just seeing a portion of the screen, then you might be able to see the pixels or observe the pixels. And if you're shooting with a camera, the same thing's true usually. If you're wider so that the screen that you're shooting, and trust me, I've done thousands of hours of screenshots off of monitors in the early days of television commercials. And if you're shooting within the bezel, in other words, you're tighter than the screen. If you're inside the bezel of the screen with your shot of the camera, you can get artifacts that will either show up as Moray, as was mentioned, or if you get it really tight, you can get color Moray because the individual red, green, and blue pixels of that display will then beat against the frequency of the red, green, and blue sensors in the camera, which are arranged in a different pattern. And so you'll see some color banding as you move in and out, and it'll swim a little bit with color rings and things like that. So you have to be careful if you're going to be shooting in tight on a display to choose a distance or a distance that doesn't beat against the frequency of those pixels. And you have to sometimes adjust that by just changing the zoom slightly or moving the camera a little bit so that beat frequency is outside the range that's visible.
What was that term you just used? I didn't think I'd ever heard it in my thing. Car Moray or color Moray, or what were you saying there? When you get that
yeah, a little color banding, because it's a difference, an artifact between the beat it's a beat frequency between the frequency of the pixels and the frequency and the display and the frequency of the pixels, an arrangement of the pixels in the camera sensor.
I thought it was a technical term that I hadn't come across yet. I probably just misheard it. Anyway, thank you all for watching today. We appreciate it. We're at the end of the show. For those of you who appreciate what we do every day, a huge thanks go out to our producers who ask the questions, who drive the show by their votes on the questions and everything else. To the panelists who come here every day and freely give of their knowledge, a thank you to each and every panelist that has ever been here. Great group of people, and it's a privilege to hang out with them. And to our amazing back-end crew, the people who you never hear about unless you watch the rolling credits, and even then you only get a subset of the number of people who are very talented and doing amazing work in the background to make this show possible. So thanks to them as well. Our telelock traversal today, 40,000 miles is how far you would have had to travel to get to the experts that you've been able to listen to today. That's 64,000 kilometers, 313 million bananas for scale. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow.
Holy smokes. Lilliput released and I just got the email while we were in the show. They released a switcher.
Lilliput switcher?
Monitored switcher. Like it's like a suitcase. It's like the Shark.
It's the pre-NAB press release flood. It's started. The dam has broken.
Is it?
Portable switcher.
10 a.m. There'll be an announcement by Aperture. I wanted to leak it, but I can't leak it.
Oh,
10 a.m. 10 a.m. 10 a.m.
The 10 a.m. announcement. I got that announcement too.
The Blackmagic show on Friday, or the post-hour show Blackmagic press conference on Friday. It's going to be a crazy bunch of stuff coming out over the next week.
A week of pre-releases before NAB.
Yeah. Everybody's strategizing how to try to get a little space in the flood of data to get their message out.
How to drive traffic to their